Good morning, everybody. This is Thursday morning's devotion. It's beautiful, early morning up here in the Berg, and I just am looking forward to seeing you all again. But we've been talking about a couple of the mountains that we have to face in life. Bearing in mind, Jesus said, "Don't fear the mountain. The little seed of faith is good enough to kick that mountain into the sea." So we've been defining some of these mountains. Today we're at the top of the biggest of all the mountains. You thought that death yesterday was the top of the mountain, that death is the greatest fear of life. No, life is the greatest fear. Death is just one of the fears. There are many people out there that sadly fear life and the prospects of living on more than they fear death. This is why, so sadly, the suicide rate is so high. So the next 2 days of devotion may never apply to you, but listen to them anyway, will you? I hope that as I talk about people with great love and understanding towards people who fear life, so much so that they're willing to take their own lives in order to escape what they fear the most, the fear of just living. Now, it's with a deep sense of compassion that I have this, because I don't have all the answers to this, but I do have a couple of very simple thoughts that I hope might be useful to you. As we've contemplated the different fears, the fear of failure, the fear of future, the fear of being found out, the fear of rejection, the fear of death, I think this is the big one for many people. Now, we were doing a comparison between King Saul and King David as to the highs and the lows and the challenges that come from their lives. Well, Saul sadly ended his life taking it himself. He fell on his own sword when he realized that he had lost a battle, and he killed himself. His little sword bearer wouldn't do it, so he killed himself. And it was a tragic end to somebody who had so much potential, and man, he could have done well. He could have come back. He could have been restored to God and to David and been a real blessing. Instead, he chose to take his own life. People, I don't care what you have done. I don't care what situation you're in. There is always hope. There is always hope. Even for someone like Judas, who took his own life, there was always hope. God is a redeeming God, and there is nothing that he cannot forgive. Judas could have come to Jesus that next day and said, "Jesus, I messed up." After he'd seen Jesus at the resurrection, he could have said, "Jesus, forgive me for denying you and for handing you over to the authorities. Jesus, I betrayed you. Can you forgive me?" And Jesus would have smiled and said, "Of course I can. Thanks for asking. I can forgive anything." Instead, he internalizes his grief and his pain and his anxiety to the point that he went out and he took his own life. But David, however, bounced back every time he was knocked down. Even with the issue with Bathsheba, David bounced back. When the issue of David counting his troops, and 70,000 people died because David messed up. Man, I'd have a really guilty conscience after that. That's real suicide material. And yet we find David bouncing back and still being able to be used of God after these gross failures. Now, there's a beautiful verse in the New Testament that says this, that David died and as he served his purpose for his generation. He died, we're all going to die, but he died having fulfilled his purpose for his generation. That means he bounced back. That means he kept coming back. I want to ask you, how did he do that? Well, there's a beautiful, in 2 Samuel chapter 21, there is David coming up against another giant. He killed Goliath, but there were other giants in David's life, and there was a guy called Saph, whose name literally means fear. David was facing the giant Saph, but here was the problem. David was exhausted. He was so tired that the previous battles, his troops had said, "David, you fought too hard. You've been too intense. You're now getting older. David, we're not going to allow you to come into battle with us anymore. We need to protect you. You're our king." But David refused. And when he went into battle, he stood against a giant called Saph, who is literally the giant of fear. And Saph came bearing down on David. And David thought that maybe his time had come. But here's the beauty. There was a soldier, a general of David's. His name was Sibbecai. And Sibbecai came to the rescue. You know what Sibbecai's name means? It means the one who surrounds. Now I'm going to tell you people, I think every verse, every word in the Bible has been chosen of God. And therefore there's something about a name. There's something in these two names. The giant of fear was defeated by Zedekiah, the one who surrounds. Now let me ask a dumb question. Who surrounds us? God. And so if we were to simplify this down to its bare roots, we would say it's God surrounding us that helps us to deal with the fear of life, not the fear of death, but it's the fear of living. Oh man, if only Saul had met Zedekiah, if only Saul had had a Zedekiah to come to him and cover him and to surround him with his presence. Even though David was so tired and he was so exhausted that he thought, I may as well just die. I may as well. Zedekiah came to his rescue. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm going to tell you people, at times in our lives, everybody needs a Zedekiah, but we have one, the best one, who is God himself. Now in 1 John 4 verse 18, here's how the New Testament would have put, says this. It says that perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love. That means it can't be our love, because our love is so imperfect. Who's the only one who can love perfectly is God. And it's his perfect love that casts out not just the fear of death and every other fear, but the fear of life itself. Because the perfect love of God, like a Zedekiah, surrounds you. So I don't know who I'm talking to today. But if you're feeling at that point where you just feel I can't live on, this is the easiest route out. The greatest fear of all is the fear of being found out. Maybe you've been found out. Maybe you're in fear of being found out over something that you've done. Well, I suggest that you go and confess it and make it right and sort this thing out. But the last thing you want to do is take your own life, because there is one who surrounds you, one who loves you, and it's his love that casts out the fear, even the fear of life. Now, this love is so sacrificial. God's love for us is so complete in everything. I know it sounds like something airy-fairy and deeply philosophical. It's not. It's incredibly, incredibly practical. The acknowledged presence of God at a time like that can be all that you need. So if something that you've been contemplating, and I don't know, if suicide is something, taking your own life is something that you are considering right now, I hope you'll listen to tomorrow's devotion, because I hope to make that more practical for you. But I love you guys. Have a great day. And remember your Zedekiah. Bye.